All right, it's 11 and we're going to start this webinar. So welcome everyone to the Southwestern Pennsylvania Energy Efficiency Roundtable Combined Heat and Power Operators Panel webinar. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to log on with us today. Just a few logistics. First, we have a chat pod where you can ask questions throughout the webinar. However, we do have a planned Q&A after the presentation. So if you want to save your questions until the end, that would be fine. So a little about the Southwestern Pennsylvania Energy Efficiency Roundtable. The Roundtable's mission is to help businesses and industry in Southwestern Pennsylvania reduce energy costs through improved energy management, energy efficiency optimization, and implementation of cutting-edge technology. The Roundtable provides a forum for large industrial and commercial energy users to share information and learn from experts on various energy topics, from energy efficiency technologies to energy management systems and strategies. Currently, the group is composed of First Energy, Duquesne Light Company, Nextent, Peoples Natural Gas, the Energy Programs Office of the Department of Environmental Protection, and PennTAP, Pennsylvania Technical Assistance Program, and has had contributing partnerships with Kia, Keystone Energy Efficiency Alliance, and SMC Business Council. We have provided past programs on compressed air systems, lighting controls, and chillers. Typically, we provide these presentations in person, but to keep on providing industrial and commercial facilities with opportunities to continue their professional development and provide a platform of resources, we have worked to put together today's webinar. This webinar will feature a panel of field experts and energy managers who are current users of combined heat and power technology. The panelists are from Allegheny Health Network, Joule Design, and MCR Performance Solutions, and will be sharing their user experience and answer specific questions related to CHP technology, understanding your energy demand, and CHP adoption process. Our previous webinar from November 19th was on CHP for commercial buildings and showcased major contributions that CHP systems can make to advance your organization's mission, commitment to sustainability, and minimizing the environmental impact. In that webinar, we answered the following questions listed. Please feel free to watch that recorded webinar to learn more about how CHP can enhance your facility. For now, I would like to introduce today's panelists. I am Alana Colvin. I have a background in electrical engineering, and I am an energy and environment technical advisor for PennTAP. While PennTAP serves all of Pennsylvania, I work out of the Pittsburgh area, performing energy audits, supporting grant applications, and working on community economic development projects throughout the counties. More information about me can be found on the PennTAP website. I would like now for our panelists to introduce themselves and explain their background and a brief note on how they interface with CHP technology. With that, Rizwan, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you so much for inviting me for the event here. Hope you find this session useful. My name is Rizwan Syed. I'm the energy manager for Allegheny Health Network. I'm responsible for managing all energy aspects of activities around the network on energy-related topics. CHP is very close to near and dear to us. We have been incorporating some of these technology within our hospitals, for the fact that we need continuous electric and thermal power. And, I'll be talking a little bit more about that subject. We have one application within the network that is coming online pretty soon, so we'll have more experiences to share towards that. Alana,
wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wonderful. Up next, Thomas.
Yes, hi, I'm Tom Crooks. I'm here supporting Duquesne Light in its programs. I have a background in automotive and diesel power technology, a bachelor's in diesel power technology with certificates in electric energy production cost modeling. I work in application engineering for recip and turbine technologies for various multinational manufacturers, both recips and gas turbines. in all applications. I was teaching faculty at OIT in their diesel power technology department and provided classroom and laboratory instruction in the application of internal combustion engines. I've worked with the U.S. DoD acquisition system for engine power generation. Was 10 years with Southern California Edison, managing their commercial, industrial, and agricultural programs. And I've been consulting for the last 19 years, supporting Duquesne Light for the last 11 years. Be happy to field your questions as we get into this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Eric.
Yes, my name is Eric Weber. I'm principal at Joule Design. We are a kind of two parts of our business. We're a certified dealer for Yanmar CHP energy systems and Victron power electronics and battery equipment. And we're also do activity in contract engineering for battery energy storage and powertrain technologies. We've been in Western Pennsylvania for I've been operating for about 10 years, and for about 6 years, we've been installing CHP systems at various sites in the area. I've worked on engineered microgrids in Hawaii, Puerto Rico, California, and I actually have some microgrids in the Western Pennsylvania area. Working with partners on many of these projects, including Peoples Gas, Hawaii Electric Company, Chatham University. My background is Bachelor's and Master's of Mechanical Engineering from Rochester Institute of Technology. And my professional background was in motorsports for several years, and then transitioned into renewable energy, working on hybrid powertrains for robotics with Carnegie Mellon, and then transitioned into energy storage with local companies such as Acreon and Hyliion. I look forward to fielding questions and explaining more about what we do.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it today and having you join us on this panel. I'm excited to get started. So today's discussion, we have themes. So we have theme number 1, review project evaluation, kind of getting involved in what it is to set up CHP from a project standpoint, understand operations and maintenance of CHP, and then some questions on how do the utilities support CHP. After that, we will have an opportunity for questions from the audience. And I will make sure we have time to review all of those and any of those. And also, if you forget a question or would like to come back later, please feel free to email me and I can make sure to answer those questions as applicable. So one more reminder, if you do have a question, use the chat pod. I will be periodically checking the chat pod. And if I see your question, we'll answer it then. Otherwise, if I miss it, we will catch it at the end. So don't fear, okay? Wonderful. So with that, we will start. First question, how do I evaluate my facility for CHP? And then the follow-up, what applications are suitable for CHP? So Joule Design, would you like to go first, Eric?
Sure. So usually when we engage with customers, the first thing we want to look at is if it's an existing building, we look at their energy usage in terms of electric and gas. We look at their mechanical infrastructure to see if the heating infrastructure is compatible with the way we output heat. We also look at things like footprint and controls interface, environmental aspects, where the building is and where it's near. So a lot of these things go into the equation. We also, that the best time to talk about CHP is in the planning phase of a building and to get in really in the engineering on ground one, or at some point when there's some sort of recapitalization or update of the mechanical systems.
Okay. All right, MCR, Tom, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I guess, my main focus and focus here today is in supporting the energy utilities and Duquesne Light specifically in evaluating projects. And so we'll want to look at qualifying the projects for rebate, for cash incentives to offset costs for their projects, And then we'll be following a lot of the protocols that are imposed on us by Pennsylvania with regard to measurement and establishing the efficiencies that support our expenditure of ratepayer dollars. So we're going to be looking at things, typical things like, the heat loads, whether this is, heat load following, the same things that Joule discussed. But primarily from a focus of looking at, does the project hold water? Have all the design elements been checked? Is there enough heat load and energy requirements for the system? And have all of the cost and parasitics been incorporated in the evaluations? So those are the things that we look at.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. Next question we have is, how did you start the conversation with stakeholders? What did you need to present and to who? Allegheny Health Network. Who's one?
Yeah, sure. The conversation always starts at, what are we really looking for? Energy efficiency or reliability? For Allegheny Health Network, we were building a brand new hospital up north of Pittsburgh and Wexford, and we started evaluating, what are the most energy efficient options. We compared the status quo, traditional chiller and boiler plant versus a CHP, and we find it interesting because hospital has a dire need for all the utilities, continuous utilities for 24/7, right? So CHP was a no-brainer. Now, we have to work with our stakeholders like, the VPs, the COOs at the hospital level and at the network level, and the CFOs at the hospital and network level to kind of evaluate the business case. Does it make sense? And that's the kind of conversation we had where we compared the status quo versus the CHP option over the life of the project.
Okay. Joule Design, do you have anything to add? Like, what would you recommend that people bring to the table when talking with stakeholders?
Yeah, I think it's important to bring, obviously, the ownership of the building. There's a lot of, soft side benefits for this, for energy and for environment, but there's also, hard economic benefits. So I think, building on the idea of making sure that it's financially viable, it's important to look at the incentives and look at the finances, but also understand how the building is going to be operated and who's going to be owning it and operating it, to make sure that the people who are going to benefit from the long-term savings are going to be present at the conversations at the beginning.
That's fair. And MCR, Tom, do you have anything to add? I will take that as not at this time. So.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
I'm back. Could you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm talking away. We're primarily looking at qualifying and supporting people's pursuit of CHP and qualifying the applications for cash incentives through Duquesne Lights programs. And so we deal with different levels of sophistication. There'll be folks just barely starting to talk about it, having kind of conceptual ideas, and there'll be folks that have full-blown submittals ready to go. So it depends on, what type of people we're engaging. But I think our mission is to be able to take folks at the beginning of their process and take them through step by step, staying in lockstep with them, so that when they get to the end, they do qualify for the cash incentive and there's no surprises.
That makes sense. Definitely, stakeholders can mean more than just the company representatives looking at for the financing and other options out there to make sure that you guys come to the table sooner than later so that any opportunity is taken advantage of. Up next, up next, we have a basic question, but what are the physical space requirements for CHP? There's so many different types of businesses out there, and even more what I would call atypical businesses that are looking into CHP. So the building sizes, if it's downtown or if it has a lot of space, you got a lot of differences. So Joule Design, Eric, do you have any comment for what are the physical space requirements for CHP?
Absolutely. So what we do is generally what's considered micro CHP. And our products that we represent are in the anywhere from the 2 kilowatt to say 35 kilowatt to arrays of 35 kilowatt systems. So I can speak to the small side, which is basically I could fit a small system through any door, and as long as I can have an outlet for the heat, I can operate it really anywhere in a building as long as I can get exhaust out appropriately. In terms of a pad-mounted small commercial system, I would need a footprint of approximately 9 foot by 13 feet, with about 8 feet of clear space.
Nice.
And I think Thomas can probably speak to the larger footprint systems.
Well, thanks for that. Yeah, it depends on the systems. I mean, some of if we start pairing these with absorption chilling systems, you need a lot more space and different consideration for codes and fire codes and whatnot. But we typically are looking at pad mounts that are vibration isolated equipment that's 8 to 20 feet with 12 to 15 feet overhead with a way to get exhaust out and cooling and fuel storage, fuel access. But it's highly site-specific stuff. I mean, we've put them on top of hospitals and underneath facilities. It depends on the sizes a lot, and whether you're getting multiple units, and whether you're stacking those up, and whether you have swing units. And so it's highly defined by the site-specific requirements. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. And then to follow up with that, Rizwan, what system did you guys decide to install?
So at Allegheny Health Network, we are doing the gas engine with heat recovery option, and it's about 2 megawatt hour engine, and I think the space requirement question can be, we had our own challenges where we were building this brand new, not only the CHP, but the mechanical plant itself. So again, as Tom mentioned, it's site specific. The design and the grill that goes through determines how you can stack up, or but the engine itself is the 2 megawatt engine itself is quite large. The other aspect that we were looking at when making a decision what systems make sense. The smaller versions are easier to install, but because we had we looked at the thermal output needs for the hospital, and then the generator itself and the overall efficiency to kind of come to a conclusion that the gas turbine with heat recovery option would be the ideal for that location, given the understanding of the thermal load expected. We had some design work done on the hospital loads to determine those aspects of the criteria.
Excellent. All right, and so moving along, what process did you go through to determine your current energy needs? When you say the thermal output need, did you hire someone out? How do you go about determining what your building will require?
Yeah, so hospitals, they're very intensive by nature, and they need both electricity and thermal load, which when I say thermal energy load is steam, hot water, chilled water. And, for us, having a CHP system on site, gives the the simultaneous production of those utilities on that location immediate to the hospital. And I think the overall operating efficiency was the driver. The transmission losses from having to buy from the grid to the site versus generating on site. Those were some of those criterias that can help us select a certain type of the unit, the CHP unit, and helped us justify matching the capacities and the loads.
Nice. Eric, do you have any recommendations for how you would go about determining current needs for a building?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when possible, empirical data, real data from a real building is the best. If it's a retrofit, the building energy usage that's currently being, utilized is the best. If it's a customer who has a similar building, we can work with their the data from a similar building. And then as a fallback option, if this is a new project, totally new for everybody, we can fall back on building energy modeling as a way of generating the demands.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. That's great. What resources do you use to help you through the new equipment review, install, and then equipment management? So this is another pointed one at Rizwan.
So I don't have any experience on the field side of it. I'm more on the business case development and kind of defining what energy efficient options are. Now, however, we worked with large engineering companies and companies that worked on the project is LLI Engineering, and then our own agents construction management team who kind of did all that review process and what makes sense and what are the things that they need to worry about. It's quite a large project for AHN, and I was involved in sitting in those meetings, looking at the options. But ultimately, what I was trying to zone into is what is the factor that would help us justify this project. Again, it comes down to how is it impacting the bottom line. We are not only increasing the reliability for the hospital by having this on site, and also improving the overall efficiency. I think those were my roles, but I think we had expert teams help through this process of contractors and vendors review all this equipment and manage the entire process.
Out of curiosity, how long from the initial idea of, hey, maybe we should do CHP to installing the CHP, how long was that timeline?
Oh boy, it did take a lot. I would say, the way from the idea to saying, hey, we want to build this, I would say between 8 to 12 months easily.
Okay.
Depending on how mature the thought process is. Existing buildings are much harder because their systems are already operating. But for us, when we were building the hospital, we had a clear times to build the hospital. So we had even with that, it took us quite a bit. But we eventually got it approved, and we feel confident. I think this will help. The general community by having better and more efficient, technology in the neighborhood.
Nice. And then to follow this question up for Eric, so the feasibility study, if you will. So basically, Rizwan is the guy in the meetings from the business perspective, and then you as that resource. What elements are you looking for, or what elements recommend that people be looking for that feasibility study so that it can go as smooth 8 to 9 months?
Yeah. So I would say, based on my experience, we're walking through many sites and having many introductory meetings. There's some intangible things some boxes need to check at the very beginning, and that is mostly to do with, is there appropriate energy usage? And then is there appropriate facility availability? So is there footprint available? Can we do it ground mount? Can we do it near a mechanical room? If you end up having to roof mount something with extremely long lines to connect it to the mechanicals, it's a hard sell. So I'd say upfront, we want to do some sort of a mechanical feasibility and energy feasibility. We want to understand the economics to see what incentives are available, and see if the customer is this something they're interested in. It's in the current policy environment, there needs to be some motivation. All the parties involved need to be motivated to make it happen. And if one party falls out, then it's hard to get it across the line.
MCR, Tom, do you have any additional input?
Yeah, sure. When we look at feasibility, I think the first thing is, and because Eric noted, we're looking at the energy requirements. Oftentimes you'll have a nice thermal load, but not large electric energy consumption, or vice versa. And so it's important that there must be enough energy requirements in electric and in heat, and the CHP waste heat must be paired with the site-specific thermal requirements, which is the $64 question with CHP. If you're placed into a heat load following mode, then you're often just wearing out your machine as you're trading dollars with the utility. So if you have a heat load and you can operate that, consistently in enough hours, then that'd be like the first check for CHP. Checking on electrical efficiencies from a feasibility standpoint, making sure that all the O&M is included, checking out and making sure that you have all of the factors included in installation costs. I was in equipment sales for 14 years before I moved into the energy utility, and I know what the perspectives are of equipment salespeople. And often they'll be focused on the total heat rejection of the unit, and assuming that's going to be a benefit when that's really not feasible, and cutting short on certain O&M requirements. Are you including all of the costs for emissions? If you have to have an urea injection, is that included? So there's a lot of shortcuts that can be taken trying to promote these equipments. So I'm going to be looking at your electrical efficiencies, your O&M, your installed cost, whether you've got heat load and energy requirements to support this as a starting point, if that helps.
No, that's excellent. I'm going to check the chat now, see if anybody has posted anything. I don't see anything at this moment. So I'm going to move on to the next theme, if it were. So operations and maintenance. What maintenance, or what are the maintenance requirements of CHP? Eric, would you mind?
Absolutely. So for the systems that we install primarily, which are the Yanmar CHP units, the maintenance is very similar to what you would have for a backup generator. So we'll be doing, fluid changes, filter changes, inspections. The part of the design of the systems we install is that they're really, they're meant for continuous duty. So while the maintenance intervals might be the same as for a conventional backup generator, your runtime is going to be, much higher. But the system is designed for that. And, in conjunction with our real-time, data monitoring and logging, it really isn't any different than a backup generator.
That makes sense. From Allegheny Health Network, Rizwan, do you have any?
So this is a kind of brand new venture for AHN, and this is one of the CHP project that we built. Is the first for the network. So there's a lot of learning to do here, and we're partnering with People's Natural Gas, and I don't have a whole lot to share on the maintenance, but I think the idea is to create, a full, parametric on analytics around it. We're gonna, measure every bells and whistles of it. Obviously, Eric did mention about the regular, need for, oil change and filter and all that. But I think I'm looking from a business standpoint. I think we are, the key is to understand, the technology that we can incorporate that we have now. We should be able to, assess, failure before it happens. Like, the only way you can do is by looking at the analytics that we're going to collect on the machines. I think, there's a lot of learning that we expect, and hopefully we can apply that as we build more or similar projects within the network.
So just to build on what you said with the analytics, so you have there's a program, you're watching the program, and then basically all of the motor, the moving parts, the heat, the airflow usage is all being monitored by sensors. And so you're looking at those analytics. Correct.
So they're going to review that 24/7 and kind of create what I call boundaries around it to say, hey, what is a critical boundary? Like, when should we investigate certain things? So again, I'm not familiar with the specifics, but the technology that we will be incorporating will be instrumental in kind of determining failure before it happens. And again, no one can predict future, but I think having those in place really helps drive how we maintain that equipment. Are we changing the filters at the right time? Are we doing regular certain hour run maintenance on it and stuff like that. So I think again, as I mentioned, it's a learning process for us partnering with People's Natural Gas. So I think we hope to capitalize on that.
Mm-hmm. I see a question popped in. I'm going to look at that real fast. Is there any permitting required for emissions on CHP projects? That's open for anybody to tackle.
Yes, I believe so. I think during the process of doing this project, we went through all the air permitting. I think not only for the township, but also for the county and several others. I think especially if we're building this in a non-commercial neighborhood, like up in Wexford, it's a very few commercial buildings. This hospital would be one of the largest ones. So we went through, several permitting. I don't know the specifics at this time, but yes, those are required.
All right, thank you.
I think I'd add that I think that often these permitting costs are left out of the ongoing operating requirements, or operating costs, when folks are doing feasibility studies. So I think it's a great question. Taxes, insurance, ongoing permitting requirements, emissions monitoring and reporting. These are all expenses that should be included in operating costs. I'd also like to, shout out to EPA's catalog for CHP technologies, which is a great resource. And they provide, overhaul schedules for different types of equipment. For example, if you had a recip application, you expect to do a top end in 8,000 to 30,000 hours. For heads and turbos, and major retrofits or major rebuild at 30,000 to 72,000 hours for piston liners, cranks, etc. So these things are. This is the CHP catalog of CHP technologies is an excellent resource. The last version was a 2017, so you need to escalate the cost a little bit, 2% per year or so, but it's a great place to go as a starting point for understanding the O&M costs.
Awesome. That's an awesome resource. Thank you for sharing that. Next question that we have for this is, this is a little bit on the generic side, but if we can expand on this, can CHP be used as an emergency backup equipment? So when sizing, what do people need to consider, like, for that emergency backup? How far can you go with it, if you will? Eric, can you elaborate a little bit? You might be on mute.
Sorry about that. So the Yanmar equipment that I work with generally can be used as a backup equipment for emergency power. The thing to note is that for our application, it's not designed specifically for backup operation for life safety. So, for example, our technology is a non-synchronous inverter-based system, so we can provide black start power for general use, lights, internal, building usage. But we are not a, specific life safety generator for, medical facilities or things like that. So I think as long as you figure out what you're backing up from the beginning, definitely it's a great use of the hardware. Just need to understand the limitations.
Very good. Allegheny Health Network, since you are a hospital. Yeah.
Sure. So for healthcare facilities, I think there's a requirement to have emergency backup power, and that's typically done by diesel generator. Regardless of whether we use CHP or not, we have to have that. The response time is, for the critical care, the life safety care, and some of the major equipment. You have to, if there is a disruption in power, the emergency setup or system needs to come back up within less than 6 seconds. So we have to have diesel generator emergency backup for those. So there's the requirement for that. Now if can we use CHP? The short answer to that is yes. The challenge would be do we have the correct or the appropriate electrical infrastructure to do that. When we were building this, we were looking at the design. We had like 13 scenarios that we went through, saying, okay, what happens if grid goes out of power? What happens if there's a disruption in fuel? So we went through a lot of those. So the short answer to that question is, if you build the infrastructure the way, yes, the emergency power can serve the emergency load, which is typically, I think, if you look at a hospital, life safety, the critical care, which is the ICU, and life safety and emergency load is, I think I would say, about 30% of typical building load. Yep.
Nice, thank you. I see we have another little question. I'm going to float in there and see what they have to say. Oh, the chat. I'll have to bring it up at the end. Sorry about that. So the next question that we have is, how do you plan on operating the CHP system? So this is similar to the question just asked, but basically explaining that there's different ways to use CHP power. You can use it up as emergency backup. In some instances, it's not used as emergency backup. So how do you plan on using that equipment? I believe, Rizwan, you've basically answered this question, but if you wouldn't mind kind of reiterating the way that you are currently using it.
So the way we think about it is the engine that we have, or the system we have for the CHP system, we would like to run that, as fully as possible. Obviously for a few reasons. The efficiency of the system itself is better if you run continuously. That's one. And then the other part is we want to kind of recoup the advantages of that system, because we have a need for that, like the electricity requirement. We need that, and then the thermal requirement, like either steam, chilled water, and hot water. We need all of that. So I think the way we look at that is we intend to operate that system continuously at full capacity, because we built and designed that way. Now during emergencies, during scenarios that we went through, we can either say operate as a backup, or feed the grid, or feed your own utility, substation or something, or your hospital or building substation where you can divert the power there instead of selling back to the grid. So with the wire net metering. So there are multiple ways you can do that, but I think, the system we chose, it's the ideal operating efficiency is achieved when you operate that, as fully as possible and as continuous as possible.
Excellent.
I'd like to support that, Rizwan. This is Tom Crooks in MCR. And that is, you're planning on 90, 93%, as high as 96% capacity factors on this equipment. So it's operating. And the extent to which it can be called on in an emergency, it's already operating. You'd need fuel storage, possibly. This is where your codes, Rizwan, I think will come in and say that you need to have diesel backup with diesel fuel storage. It needs to be able to come up in X amount of seconds. So to me, you are operating these things all the time. If kind of the question is how would you operate it more in an emergency? I don't see it as standby power. It's already operating.
That's fair. I see another chat. So this is in the Q&A. So the chat didn't come through, but the Q&A is coming through. Oh, there's the chat. It has to do with the way that I shared my screen. So I have two questions. What kind of subsidies are available for CHP programs? Who runs those programs?
I can take that.
Okay.
There are multiple different grants available within the state of Pennsylvania. We were fortunate enough to get the ACE grant, the Alternative Clean Energy Grant, and that helped us, kind of justify the project, and really certainly, that was welcoming grant that really helped us. So that's the number one question. I think I'll let others answer that before we jump on to the second one.
I can speak for Duquesne Light. At this point, we're going through, the energy efficiency programs are provided under the auspices of Act 129 that has phases. At this point, we're ending the third 5-year phase, third phase, which was a 5-year period, in December 2020. But as we go forward, looking starting again in June 2021, there will be additional incentive programs offered. In the past, the past program offered 5 cents per annualized kilowatt hour for the first full year of operation, up to $750,000 for a project. So that's an indication of the kind of support that the electric utilities can offer, and Duquesne Light did offer. But we expect a new offering to be developed and circulated starting June 2021. There's also significant federal tax credits that are available for those operators that are not nonprofits.
Excellent. Also a second question. Do CHP owners typically use OEM services maintenance contractors or their own people for operations and maintenance?
This is Eric at Joule Design. I can at least speak to the projects I've engaged with. We generally engage in a long-term maintenance contract with the customer. So we install, commission, operate the system, and we do periodic maintenance, and we work with the ANMAR on the warranty. So that's my perspective.
This is Rizwan from Allegheny Health Network, and we're looking into the similar approach. Though my boss says this, we're not in the business of running power plants. We're in the business of providing health care, and the number one priority for us is patient care and and we would like to keep that, right? So we do engage in service and maintenance contracts, especially for a specialized piece of equipment, and a long-term agreement in place would really help, prolong the life and expectancy, and in general the operation, a smoother operation.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. So in addition to that, we're going to move on to our next theme. These are going to be a little bit pointed towards Tom, but nonetheless. So kind of a generic question, but kind of looking for what are the roles for the key players, for the stakeholders in the CHP projects. Kind of to elaborate that you have utilities, you have your developers, you have certain types of client or internal, external customers. Who are said key players? Who are those stakeholders that you have worked with?
I think ultimately the primary key player is the end use customer for us. I mean, Duquesne Light is concerned with supporting its customer base, and so the primary focus is the customer. Other players all come in, your design build A&E firms, architects, engineers, equipment suppliers, regional distributors, vendors of the technologies. But I think our main focus is supporting the customer. In that regard, we're technology neutral. We don't advocate for any particular brands or configurations, and then bring the engineering expertise to support the customer to the extent they need that. Some need it, some don't. And so I think our focus is really customer-centric, and then technology neutral, and provide the objective expertise if that's needed.
Excellent. Rizwan or Eric, do you have anything to add from your perspectives?
Yeah, I could just reiterate basically that the end customer is really the one who benefits the most in terms of economic and kind of the other the other results of the system. So sometimes it's a challenge if it's a developer building a building and their intention is to sell it immediately. That can be a challenge in the group of stakeholders if they're not particularly motivated to install the equipment. They're not going to be there in 5-10 years with the operations costs. So I think finding the right project, getting the end customer involved early is important.
Mm-hmm. And then I have one last question on this topic. So although, Tom, you look at Duquesne Light, can you kind of walk through what you do to evaluate for the CHP?
Sure. Yeah, and it's quite unique. The utilities have an odd perspective compared to the end users or the vendors of equipment. We really are saddled, if you will, mm-hmm. subject to overarching regulation, which is quite specific. And it focuses on the utilities' avoided cost. So as opposed to, bill savings or that kind of thing, the customer may be focused on the participant cost test. The utility is subject to the total resource cost test evaluation, where we look at the avoided cost of transmission, distribution, generation, capacity, ancillary services, all those wholesale power supply elements, net present value over the life of the equipment. That's the value of the project. The customer really doesn't see all that. And so when we look at a project, we'll be looking at the present value of all of those utility avoided costs divided by the cost of the equipment and the cost of the programs, which forms the total resource cost test, TRC. if a TRC is less than 1, a utility often will not support that project. The utilities are subject to positive TRC scores at the portfolio level, and they have to manage that down to the measure level, which would include a CHP project. So it's a very unique, complex, regulated, technical, legal, regulatory question that folks aren't going to know about because it's going on behind the scenes. But suffice it to say, we're looking at equipment cost, O&M cost, and all of those things. And then when we turn these projects in and say we provided somebody a $500,000 incentive for a CHP project, we're going to have several layers of independent auditors crawling into our business and examining every element as to that cost effectiveness claim. What do you mean you included the O&M cost? Did you include the 10% addition to the fuel cost for urea injection? Did you do this? Did you do that? So we have very, very high oversight, regulatory oversight of these cost effectiveness claims. And so it's a great question. How do utilities evaluate CHP? It's really quite different than how an end-use customer evaluates it. And it goes on concurrent, kind of behind the scenes as these projects roll forward. That's why it's really necessary for the utilities to be in lockstep with the implementers to make sure that we're checking all those boxes so that we are allowed to provide the cash incentives that the customer anticipates.
Great answer. Thank you for all that detail. That was great. And so those are the questions that I have pulled at this time. Open to the forum for anybody to ask questions. I know we had a couple that came through earlier and we went through those, but if anyone has any additional questions, now's the time. And while we're waiting for questions to come through, if any come through, I do have one of my own. What, for anyone to answer, a lessons learned kind of conversation. What is it that you know now that you wish you knew before you started your project or start a project? If we're all responding at once or if we're all on mute. Eric, do you have anything to recommend as a lessons learned, or you watch people go, oh no, I wish I did this instead of that?
Maybe I can add.
Okay.
This is Rizwan for Allegheny Health Network. So the way, just in a nutshell, as a business owner, right? Mm-hmm. Why does it make sense, right? So if you look at the infrastructure for an existing building, the way that's just my perspective. The way I see it is like, there's a deferred maintenance or infrastructure that you have to, upgrade your existing equipment, like boilers and chillers. So in an ideal world, the difference between a CHP run plant and a status quo, which is just a typical boiler chiller plant, is the engine itself. The way I look at it is, when we do lessons like that, how do you build that business case? Mm-hmm. Do we build as, hey, I need to spend $20 million building everything from scratch, or would I say, hey, I had to invest $12 million anyways, and I am able to just add another $5 to $8 million for an engine or like a CHP generator? How do you justify that? So I think having that, costs and things like that would really help drive the conversation with the leaders to say, hey, the idea is, can I add a CHP engine or generator, whatever we call it, and can I justify that from the energy savings we can accomplish? So think about it, like on a typical project, let's say if it's a $20 million project, the cost to improve the infrastructure is more than half, like let's say $12 million. The $8 million that we have could be for the engine itself, the generator, the O&M related to that. Can my energy savings over the life of the project justify investing that money, and the subsidies or the grants that are available offset that cost. I think having that kind of exercise would help make a business case better than just saying, "Hey, I need to make a big investment." So that the perspective might give some different insight to how people can justify projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Eric from Joule Design. I would agree that we are much more successful at landing systems when we are involved in the the early development stages of a new facility, because the majority of the engineering and installation cost is just part of the rest of the project. It's much harder to go into a built building that's been operating and then add on a lot of additional costs that have to support the installation. So we find better success when we're involved early in the conversation, and it's right now there's some markets for carbon tax, and there's some incentives. I think it really needs to be marketed as a long-term energy savings, but also some environmental benefits, and it's a challenge. But we found that getting in early to those conversations is the most important thing.
Awesome, thank you. Let me minimize that. So I have, sorry about that. I'm gonna scroll back here. Is there any heat gain implications for an indoor application? Do you have any factors in building envelope installation to installations? This was a question from the audience. You need me to repeat that, or?
I would offer, this is Tom Crooks with MCR, I would offer that kind of like an interactive factor for a CHP. We have to consider parasitic loads associated with ventilation, fans, cooling tower. A lot of CHPs will have cooling towers because you can't always rely on using all of the waste heat all of the time, and you can't have them overheat. So you have to, these are all end up as parasitic loads, i.e., 3% of the total output, is typically allocated to parasitic loads, and those loads would be associated with keeping the building neutral to the CHP's existence. I don't know. I hope that's responsive.
No, that works. Thank you. At this time, no other questions have come through. If someone does think of a question, you can always shout it out to me in an email later. I'll share my email address, and I can direct that along to connect everybody. So moving forward, so we wrap up here. I just wanted to make a note that for 2020, there are no more upcoming webinars, but come back in 2021 and see what's posted. Also, a little self-serving, but the same rate, we work with our partners. We have our mailing list. So if you're interested in receiving our newsletter, we do post like this webinar for the Southwestern PA Energy Efficiency Roundtable. We post about different incentive programs with our resource partners, other webinars as applicable and useful to our clients. So please feel free to just add your name and email address, and you'll receive a monthly newsletter that also will have funding opportunities as they come up and other professional development opportunities. Just giving a shout out for everybody. As mentioned, these are all of the partners' information. So if you want to reach out to anybody on the Southwestern Pennsylvania EE Energy Efficiency Roundtable, feel free to connect with any of these guys. They will be able to help you out. And with that, here is my information. If you have any questions or need me to connect you with anybody, I really appreciate the time everyone took today. Thank you so much, Tom, Rizwan, and Eric for coming out today in this Zoom format, but speaking on behalf of CHP and answering all the questions that we had. I really appreciate that. There is one more comment that's coming through. see if I can make that show up. All right. Nope, it's just a compliment. Thank you. So I'm glad you all enjoyed it. So until then, I hope you all have a great day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.